the purpose of today's chapter knowledge series around the board packets is really to help everyone be more productive during your board meetings and making sure they're moving efficiently. So I'd like to start with one of the things, this is a list of effective board leadership qualities and things that you would be doing as a board leader. And so as the president, or if we have any president-elects on today with us as well, is that two areas really are around that board meeting structure, are around discussions. And so one is making sure that you define the parameters of discussions and also the focus of the discussions. And we all know that within our board meetings, sometimes discussions can take a life of their own, and you go down a path that really doesn't need to be going down. Or you're getting into the minutia of something, and it's really bringing your board members back into the discussion that needs to take place instead of going deeper than they really need to. So a board packet can really help you in this tool to bring back those discussions during your board meeting. So as I said, this is a tool for you guys to all use. But other reasons why board packets are really important to make sure that, again, our boards are looking at them is that it's keeping the board informed on the key activities of the chapter. And it's also setting the stage to think strategically, of bringing it back to those strategic goals of your chapter. So with that, what is a board packet? Now, again, I know most of you probably have seen this or supplied this in the past, but really the board packet supports the agenda that you're working through. So the materials and the documents that are in this packet are supporting. And then it's really important that these are provided prior to the meeting. With the type of information that is in a board packet, if people aren't reviewing it prior, it's not going to make for an effective meeting for you all. So it's really important to set that standard. And I will be referencing that a few times over the next few minutes with this, is because I feel that it's crucial to give your board members time to look through what's in the packet. This should also be consistent. So you're training your board, and you are all in a very unique situation right now where you're at the beginning of the year, and for the presidents on the call, this is the beginning of a lot of your terms, that setting the standard of this is what my board packet is going to look like. Now, whether or not you're the person who is actually putting together the packet or sending it out, I think it's really important that the president and your CED work together to make sure that your board packet is the most efficient for all of your board members, and being consistent will help them navigate through the board packet. By a show of hands, has anyone been kind of confused at information that they've ever seen in a board packet, or not sure where to find something? Again, feel free to raise your hand or to use the emoji with that. But if it's not consistent, you're not going to know what you're going to look for, and then you're not going to be able to make the best decisions at the end of the day as a board. The other piece to this, again, with that consistency, is making sure that it's easy to access, that it's not a link that's behind so many walls that the people can't get to it. Again, historically, these were mailed out to people. In this day and age, it's usually an electronic link with a PDF attachment and an email. So making sure that these are easy. For those of you who do share a PDF, do you put bookmarks within your PDF so people can easily jump to the sections? Is anyone doing that? So I'm seeing a lot of head shaking no, a couple yeses. By just taking a little bit of extra time to add those bookmarks, it could make it easier for your other fellow board members, or again, if the CED or another staff member is putting these together, all of the board members to look through and find the area of information for that meeting. So again, making sure that it's easy to use. before, actually, I'm going to jump back really quick. I'm going to launch one more poll to all of you once I can find my Zoom toolbar here, of what you include in your packet. So I'm going to go ahead and launch that. The first question, please feel free to select any of the things that you include in your packets or you've seen in your packets.
Hey, Kelly.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but there's a question in the chat. What is a BP? I know we refer to business partners as BP, but can you clarify what you were referring to as BP?
So within here, it's board packet. So I
Okay.
apologize for that.
So, thank you. We said business partner, but then I thought it might have been board packet. And then the other question, which you may be getting to, is how many days in advance would be standard for getting the board packet out?
Yeah, that's really going to depend on your chapter, and we will get into this in a little bit, but we can take the time to kind of walk through that while everyone's finishing up taking this poll. It's really a standard to do the pulse within your chapter. I know some will do it a few days ahead of time, and again, that's that expectation that everyone has 3 days to review this. Personally, I like to be able to give people a week because you don't know what happens. You have to remember, again, that our board members are all volunteers. And so they do have other regular day jobs that they're doing and families. And so they might slot out, a specific time on a specific day that they have to review this in preparation for the board meeting. So I think giving a week would be my recommendation of a standard time. But again, feel free to take a pulse within your board, because again, your board might be comfortable to say, yep, 3 days before we're comfortable with receiving this, or if there's a weekend, so let's say your board meeting takes place on a Monday, we'd like to make sure it's out by Friday so it gives the weekend for your volunteers and your board members to really look through this. And I think it's also, we'll get into this as well, of setting that standard of when you want to receive information by. And the more standard you can make things that continually every month it's due by the 1st, for example, then it's setting that standard that everyone knows I have until the 1st to get this in, or the 3rd Tuesday to get this over to everybody. So I'm going to go ahead and end this poll. One of the very interesting things I'm seeing here is both the strategic goals and action items not being a higher percentage. I definitely recommend that having those within your packet as a reminder of, specifically for the strategic goals, where your chapter's trying to go this coming year is really important, and what those are. So while we do recommend having that on as an agenda item to discuss strategically, having a page within the packet of here are those goals and here's what we've discussed and what we agreed upon as a board, so they can always go back to that very easily during your board meeting of what really are our strategic direction. Now, again, I know some of you might have, I'm going to call out Illinois, for example, a multi-page piece. And so maybe it doesn't make sense to include it into your board packet because that's just going to provide too much information or make the board packet too long. So again, get that pulse for your board of what is good to have and to include to make those discussions and decisions during your board meetings. So again, the agenda, again, this is the direction of the meeting. What's going to be taking place? What does everyone need to know about of the direction for that day? Action items. This is really important to know. What decisions do we have to make today? Is there no action items? Do we have to talk about a contract? There a certain piece of information in this packet that I have to review more thoroughly than just an understanding that something is taking place? The previous meeting minutes are very important. You should be approving those, the previous ones, and so you should be sharing those and allowing for any edits that need to take place. Financial documents. These really vary by chapter of what's being presented. This could be a profit loss, a comparison to budget, a statement of accounts. So again, I think setting that standard of what financial documents are going to be presented at the board level. Again, I've seen some chapters even put their check log or their payment log in here. This is really what's the standard, what's important for the board as a whole to understand the financials of the chapter and to do their fiduciary duty as a board member. Committee reports. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't stop sharing that poll. Sorry that was up in front of all of you. Committee reports. So a lot of times, this takes up a large chunk of a board meeting, is giving a report about what functions the committee has been working on since the past meeting. Where if it was a written report with no action items, could that free up your time to have a bigger discussion? Or if your board meetings are 2 hours long, could that cut it down to an hour because you're not sitting there going through, again, the minutia of all of your committees and what they're working on versus having them submit a written report of what was discussed at their previous meeting. I will say, depending on chapters, the way you get these reports really varies. And again, going back to your chapter structure, do you want your committees to send these reports to the liaison and the liaison present them to someone who is putting that packet together? Or do you have a Dropbox that you want the committee to drop that report into? And this is where I think it becomes very important to set that standard time frame of, do we need these by the first of the month or the third Wednesday of the month to be uploaded so that there is enough time to add them to that board packet. Again, there's always ability to have a discussion if you need to go deeper into any of the committees, but this really helps having that written report where you don't have to go too deep into going through all of your committees and what they need to report on. A leadership report. So this can either be one or both of these types of options, where it's from your chapter executive director writing a report of anything that the board should know about that took place. So again, normally this could be a vocal report, but in a written report, does that free up space to be able to, again, have those more discussions around decisions that need to be made or those action items. The other leadership report is from your president or president-elect. Is there anything happening that you need to let the board know about that are kind of behind the scenes, or maybe they talked with some members somewhere? And again, it's just kind of giving the pulse for that moment from that leader. Again, this is something that can be given vocally, but if there's more information and it's just a update, then having that written can really be helpful with the discussions. Making sure you have supporting documents. So I'm going to give an example of, let's say the board needs to approve a location for an upcoming event, and it's the contract that you're looking at. You'll want to make sure that the contract is included, that everyone can look over that contract and come with any questions, versus we've received the contract and we're ready to sign it. Because just by saying, yes, we've received it, do you know the food and beverage minimum? Is there a room rental fee? How does this compare to last year's? If it's $50 a person to meet the food and beverage minimum, is that within our budget structure? So making sure that you provide that information so that people can look through and feel comfortable with the decisions that they're making. And then anything that might be a specialty project. So we all know that something comes up, and let's say you want to attend a a workshop within the industry and you're going to send the president to that, maybe there's something or a report that he wants to present, she wants to present during that. So making sure that there's space for any additional reports. At this time, are there any questions that are coming through, or does anyone have a question? Okay. I know this is kind of dry, so thanks for hanging in here with me, everyone.
Hey, Kelly, there is one
Yes.
question
Yes.
that backs up a little bit to the BP, sorry.
Yeah.
That Isaac was asking why the board president would be preparing the packet. So I think it said the CED and the board president. So can you clarify that a little bit?
Yes. So we do have some chapters that have more of a working board than a full-time chapter executive director. And so their board members are taking on more of an operational piece to it. So in those chapters specifically, some of our board presidents or our secretaries even are putting together the board packets versus the chapter executive director or a chapter staff member. Okay, so what to avoid in your packets? Don't provide too much background information. Again, we want to be forward thinkers. So using that example with the hotel contract and a food and beverage minimum. So what did we spend last year on food and beverage? And do we think that we could meet this one? Well, you don't want to do the last 10 years of what you've spent if it's not going to affect this, if the programs might have changed. Again, there's so many logistics that, again, is providing too much of a history is going to put you into the minutia and not be able to make that forward thinking piece. So just to make sure that you're looking at that, and that relates also to the third bullet point of too little information. Because if you don't provide the food and beverage minimum, can you make that decision on that contract? Or you didn't provide, okay, this was the spend that we did, or the average person we spent this amount on last year, and we had this many attendees. So just making sure that the data that you're putting in here is the right amount of the past to be able to make that decision for that future project. The other thing is having it to be too long. We all know that people can provide a lot of information, and you don't want a packet that's 500 pages long and it's going to take 5 hours to read. No one's going to read that packet and no one's going to be prepared for the meeting. So making sure that, again, you've set that standard. I've seen some chapters put a template together for their committees to submit the reports back, or say, can you provide 1 page of a report? So again, just making sure that this is something that is readable. And it goes back to, again, the question that we had around the time of getting the packet. If your packet is 10 pages long and you feel that your board members are going to be able to review this somewhat quickly, then that's great. But if it is a little bit longer of a packet and there is that expectation that this might take a half hour to look through, you want to make sure that you have that expectation with your other board members. You don't want anyone to be surprised that they think this is going to be a half hour to look through something, and realistically, it's a 3-hour deep dive into some information. Again, the organization I really feel is key here. And I do have a recommendation that you should put the decisions first on your agenda. And the reason I'm saying this is, how many of you have waited till the end to make a decision and everyone's tired or they're burnt out and they've already discussed in minutia all of those things that you've been roping them in for, and now we have to make a decision on something and we're mentally, no one's ready for that. And it's just either yes, go ahead, or we don't have time to have a full discussion on this. So I am putting out that recommendation that you have the 4 decision things high on your agenda, but also high within the packet. These are the items that we're going to be talking about first and we're making a decision on. Then have items that we need to discuss. Maybe there's not a decision about it, but there needs to be discussion taking place. And so you're giving the next main brain space for that. And then all of this is just for your information. So for example, on a lot of board agendas, I see the approval of the previous minutes right at the top. And you sit there, while yes, that's an action item, that's not something that needs to be done right away. And maybe there's a different piece that should be put forward first before really going into, again, the approval of minutes, which 99% of the time it's, yes, we reviewed, there's no changes, approved, continue. Now, I will say though, sometimes it feels good to have something checked off very easily at the beginning. So that's a very easy, yay, we did something, we're motivated, we got something accomplished, let's move forward. Does anyone have any questions about any of that piece of it? Okay. So again, setting the standards, we've talked a little bit about this. This is going to vary, again, based on your chapter, based on your structure, but really knowing who is the person that's putting this together. When should all of the information be provided to that person and how? Is it through email? Is it through a Dropbox link? Is it through a document upload that you have connected to any of your technology pieces? When will the packet be delivered? And again, I think as long as you stick to this time frame, so you're setting that standard for all of your other board members, that's the key piece to it. So if you're saying you have 3 days to review this, they know every month or every quarter, I have 3 days to look this packet over. If it's a week, they know, and so they can prepare and set their schedules and their time frame correctly. Setting the standard that it's important to review this packet ahead of time. I was actually just recently with a chapter and had them all vocally agree to reviewing their board packets previous to the meeting. They all made that agreement together that to be effective in their future board meetings, they would make sure they would all review their packets ahead of time versus not and saying, oh, I didn't have time to review it. Can we go through each of the committee reports? That's not beneficial. And also holding your board members accountable for this. That if they're not, having that conversation with them of, is there a reason? Do we need more time to submit this to you? Was this a one-off piece? So again, that accountability, but also making sure that they have an understanding how important it is to review. And again, just don't overload the packet with information that's not needed or not necessary. So in closing, just having a good, organized, well put together board packet and having those standards in place, it's going to give you as the chapter leader the ability to be more effective during your meeting, to have those key discussions, make those key action decisions, and to keep everyone on track for what they're going to do, and to give you the ability to really focus on your strategic goals with everything. So at this point, if anyone wants to come off mute or if there are any other questions, this will be the time for that. Or if anyone wants to share anything or any tips that you do with your chapters that have been very beneficial.
I have some questions, input. I noticed one person did put in the chat. Will this be available to look at later?
Yes, we
Okay.
are recording this and we will also put the slides in the toolkit as well.
Okay. I have a great board, but it's coming down to the liaison for the board for, let's say, the committee of education. The liaison is also the chair of that committee, but we're having issues of that person not getting the task done. I mean, we have been giving her a deadline, but then even the deadline passes. And even though I'll send emails, the CED will send emails, it'll still take another week for us to get the information of the education event that they are putting on. And so we can get that in an email blast, but we have to look it all over first and put little things with it. It's not like it can go out right away. So what is a suggestion of trying to get the committee chair and also who's on the executive board to get things in on a timely manner, even though we're giving a deadline.
Yeah. I think definitely if it's something that's continually happening, it's having a conversation with that person
Okay.
of, here's the deadline, it's continually being missed. Is there a breakdown in the communication? Is there a breakdown? Is it just that you're overworked or overstretched? And so we need to bring someone in. And I know that's difficult with volunteers, because again, let's be real, the work that you're doing on a regular basis, that's going to usually take precedent over the chapter responsibilities. Or again, personal things might take precedent. And so I think having that conversation and that understanding of, what's realistic and what's not, I think that's key there. And I do recommend that comes from the president or the president-elect in this case. If it's the liaison that's missing the deadlines, again, that can come from you. If it's a committee chair that's not the same person as the liaison, then again, I think the liaison having that communication with the committee chair and reiterating why it's important to meet these deadlines, because it is affecting the decision making of things moving forward or the operations of the chapter with that.
I would add, depending on what you set up as the role of your board liaison, I would suggest that maybe the board liaison not otherwise be involved in that committee. We used to have like where the board, I'm already going to that meeting anyway, I'll just be the liaison. And that structure really doesn't typically work, because if you have an issue, it's hard to have the board liaison kind of reprimand themselves. Right. So we now make it so that the board liaison is not otherwise part of that committee. So that maybe is a suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Anyone else? Emily, is there any other questions in the chat right now?
There was a question that I answered, but in case
Okay.
anyone else has this as well, it was if a report from all disciplines is required by us, by CAI headquarters, and do we send a copy of the monthly board packets to forward to anyone? So I did answer that question in the chat, that it's not a requirement that you send your board packets to us. We do ask for at least quarterly meeting minutes that are due with your chapter recertification. So that's the only requirement that we have surrounding that. We do also ask for your for at least quarterly financials as well. So those are things that would be included in your board packet that we require for recertification.
Thank you, Emily.
You're welcome.
So our next chapter knowledge series will be around AI and how to utilize that within your chapters. And then before we close out and all leave today, I just wanted to share a short video with you all.
The world needs to stop being boring. Yeah, you. Boring is easy. Everybody can be boring, but you're gooder than that. Life is not a game, people. Life isn't a cereal either. Well, it is a cereal. And if life is a game, aren't we on the same team? I mean, really, right? I'm on your team. Be on my team. This is life, people. You got air coming through your nose. You got heartbeat. That means it's time to do something. A poem. Two roads diverged in the woods, and I took the road less traveled. It hurt, man! Really bad. Rocks, thorns, and glass. My pants broke. Wah! Not cool, Robert Frost. But what if there really were two paths? I want to be the one that leads to awesome. It's like that dude Journey said, don't stop believing unless you dream stupid. Then you should get a better dream. I think that's how it goes. Get a better dream and keep going. Keep going, keep going, and keep going. Will Michael Jordan have quit? Well, he did quit. So he retired. Yeah, he retired. But before that, in high school, what if he quit when he didn't make the team? He would have never made Space Jam. And I love Space Jam. What will be your Space Jam? What will you create will make the world awesome? Nothing if you keep sitting there. That's why I'm talking to you today. This is your time. This is my time. It's our time. We can make every day better for each other. If we're all on the same team, let's start acting like it. We got work to do. We can cry about it, or we can dance about it. We were made to be awesome. Let's get out there. I don't know everything. I'm just a kid. But I do know this. It's everybody's duty to give the world a reason to dance. So get to it. You've just been pep talked. Create something that will make the world awesome. Play ball.
So go out, make the world awesome, and think about what your Space Jam would be. So thank you all for joining us today. I hope to see you in February on our upcoming CED water coolers for you and the president sharing sessions for our other chapter leaders. But I hope you have a great rest of your week. And again, thank you for joining us today.